Welcome to the I Work For Him podcast. I'm Michael Miracle, producer of the I Work For Him radio program, the voice of the faith and work movement. Our mission is to transform the workplace of every Christian into a mission field. What does that look like in your workplace? Let's find out right now.
You've tuned into I Work For Him, the mouthpiece for the faith and work movement. We're your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg.
Thank you for joining us today, everybody. We're so glad you're here. I want to make sure that you have taken a moment to go to the awakenpodcastnetwork.com. This is a place where you can not only find I Work For Him podcasts, but also more than 125 different podcasts that are speaking about their faith and their work, and in different forms, whether they are speaking into leadership or government or whatever their different sphere where they have influence and they're having the conversation. So check it out, awakenpodcastnetwork.com.
You know, when I was a kid, men were men and boys were boys, and we were good with that. Men defended the honor of women and fought the wars, and they were respected as bosses and fathers. Then the cancel culture kicked in, and in the name of women's liberation, they demeaned, demasculated, and canceled men so that on TV they're portrayed as idiots, sex-starved, and singularly minded. Now, hear me when I say this. Women did need to be raised up in our country and our churches. They still need to be raised up to an equal status in over 100 countries around the world. That's not the point of the conversation today. We needed to teach men to be godly men without telling them that their testosterone was wrong. Where is the church in all of this? 60 years later, where are all the men in the church? Men are addicted to pornography, and men are leaving their wives for the pipe dream in the cubicle next door. Where are the men learning and being mentored and being discipled by men to be the kind of man that God wants them to be? Where do men go to learn this? I found just the place where men can hear from real men about struggles and victories both at home and at work. Real men with real stories with God as the central character. That's my kind of action. Blake Mattocks is passionate about men being godly men. So passionate that he started 365christianmen.com, and he's here to tell us about it. Don't disconnect just because you aren't a man. This is for you too. Blake, welcome to I Work For Him.
Jim, Martha, thank you for having me today. Great to be with you.
Blake, we're going to get to the story of 365christianmen.com in a second. First, tell us your Jesus story.
My Jesus story starts when I was a kid. I grew up the oldest of four, born and raised in Southern California. I would say a religious home. Christians, Catholics, going to church on Easter and Christmas. About 12 years old, significant time in my life, I developed what they called cystic acne that really isolated me the majority of my maturing years. And as a result of that, developed some serious anger issues. And at 18 years old, signed up to go into the United States Marine Corps after graduating high school because I actually wanted to be able to harm people without going to prison. So I found myself in the United States Marine Corps, stationed at Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station in Hawaii, and shortly after getting there, being stationed on the USS New Orleans in the Indian Ocean. During that time, I met a man from Arvada, Colorado, who was a Christ follower and couldn't go very far, being in the middle of the Indian Ocean on a ship for 6 months. And so he talked to me a lot about the Lord and the difference between religion and a relationship with God. And so I ended up having an about face, if you will, during my Marine Corps years. I had actually decided I was going to make a career out of it, but my mother died at 38 years old of melanoma. And because it wasn't wartime, I was discharged honorably and sent home, really with no idea about what I was going to do with my future. And I got a card in the mail from his parents, and they invited me to come visit Colorado. He was actually still in the Marine Corps. And I came, visited their family, went to church with them, and through a series of events over the next 3 months during that time, really had an encounter with Jesus Christ that transformed my life. And some 40 plus years later, I live about 10 miles from where that home was, maybe about 20 miles from where that home was. But really, that was the turning point in my life, from being a religious person to a Christ follower.
You know, Blake, we could end the conversation right there, although we're not going to, because we want to talk about 365 Christian Men. But what I just heard was so amazing in the sense that, we talk about sharing our faith, being in a mission field in our work. And a lot of times we don't think about the fact that being in the military is a workplace, right? And so that friend of yours, that person on that ship in the Marines, that was his mission field, to be there for you and really plant all those seeds and share all of his love for Jesus with you. So I just am grateful to hear that, because that is just another perspective on living out your faith in your work right there in the military. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm so grateful that he did, and that his family was a part of that conversation as well. So fast forward through, you learned the difference between a religion and a relationship with Jesus. So where did this 365christianmen.com, where did that come from? What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually came at a crossroads in my life where I had, if you will, blown up my relational and my vocational world. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to work in construction. Not long after that, really feeling a prompting and a call from the Lord to full-time ministry. So I went to Bible college, became a pastor, and was ordained in 1991 as a pastor, and served in multiple roles, from church planter to campus pastor to executive pastor to teaching pastor. And in 2018, I hit a crossroad where I had blown up, like I said, my vocational and my relational world, where my wife and I had a crucial conversation where we had decided that I was going to go to the senior pastor and resign, because I had found myself in an emotional affair and felt like I had disqualified myself from being able to serve. So we went to the pastor and said, it's time for me to resign. And so, being married almost 38 years, at that time 35 years, I was at a crossroads. I had just forfeited my opportunity to serve as a pastor and a leader in the church. And so really had to work hard at figuring out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. First of all, restoring my relationship with my wife. And we made the decision that we were going to stay in the church. My wife had over 40 years in that church, and I had over 35 years in that church. And it was at that time that one of the leaders in the church came to me. I really didn't know what I was going to do. And one of the leaders came to me and said, I've had a vision for something called 365 Christian Men. And it was at that time that we sat down and we had a conversation about his vision, and from him sharing vision.
When we come back, I want Blake to share that vision, but we're going to take a break. We're talking about Blake Mattocks. Check him out online, 365christianmen.com, 365christianmen.com. Here's the cliffhanger. We'll be right back. Hats off to Mrs. Connie Johnson, my 8th grade English grammar teacher. She taught me how to write sentences so that I could one day write a blog. In fact, every week I write a blog from what my father has laid on my heart. It's always short and to the point, and I hope impactful for you, just like it is impactful for me. We include it in our weekly email that also includes all the shows that we release on podcast that week. So it's kind of like a bonus email, blog and podcast links. Awesome. iworkforhim.com. Click on blog. Hey, we're back on I Work For Him here, talking with Blake Mattocks from 365christianmen.com, 365christianmen.com. Blake, you're right in the middle of talking about, okay, this pastor had a vision, and he's speaking to you at a time when your life is, well, you've reached a crossroads. Tell us what happened next.
So we sat down, and he and his wife were a couple that had raised 4 sons. And he was a man that was passionate about history, and especially church history. And he wanted role models or inspirations for his 4 sons. And so he had a vision to write stories about men from the apostles to modern day men, that could be stories that would inspire his sons to live out their calling. And so we sat down and we began to dream in June of 2018, what would this look like? And so that was the start of 365 Christian Men. Originally, we were going to do it as a book. And the idea was we were going to create a book. It would be print on demand, but possibly an ebook as well. And from that, it morphed into a podcast and a video, and along with an ebook and an audiobook.
So I'm guessing that for those that are, this has piqued their interest and they're like, I want to get connected to that, they can find all of those resources at 365christianmen.com.
But here's the deal, Blake. I kind of didn't tell Martha about all of what we can find on 365christianmen.com. It's incredible. It didn't end up being a book. You ended up going a whole lot further. Let's just step back for a second, though. What's the status of manhood in America today? Where's it at in America and in the church?
Great question. One of the reasons that my wife and I made the decision to stay at Faith Bible Chapel when I had blown my world up in 2018 was because most often people find themselves running from the challenges and running from the problems instead of facing them. And where there's a vacuum in the family, where there's an absentee father or there's an absentee role model, it's needed. And so one of the desires that we had with 365 Christian Men was to create a model for people to see that men who have blown it, men that have made mistakes, men that have experienced the highs and lows in life could step back up and they could step back into the game, if you will. So I think there's a great void today in manhood in America and in the world. And so we need role models and we need people that can model what it means to do it right, but to also do it wrong and to get back in the game and say, you know what, I haven't done it all right, but there is redemption and there is opportunities after falling down.
All right. So you didn't write the book, but you decided to produce daily videos. 365 daily videos on the stories of men who, not perfect men, just men who have learned about their faith. Tell us about what you decided to do, and then tell me about one of the stories.
Yeah. So what we set out to do, again, from the apostles to modern day men. So we hired a team of writers. There were about 50 people that worked on 365 Christian Men, from writers to editors to narrators, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we did is we set out to write stories about men from every walk of life, from presidents of universities to abolitionists, to actors, to executives, to people that have been in prison and out of prison, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't write the stories, but what we did is we hired writers to capture the stories. So we created a spreadsheet for one story for every day for an entire year. And we've created that. We've created that content. We have a story for every day of the year. There's so many stories that resonate with me. One of them that constantly resonates with me is one that we wrote about James Dobson. He was the founder of Focus on the Family and grew up and was a tennis player in Southern California at UCLA and was very successful to the point where had a trophy case at UCLA filled with the trophies. And fast forward decades, and somebody happened to be in the back of one of the buildings in the dumpsters and happened to find the trophies laying in the dumpster. And I remember him telling the story, and that's the story that we captured about pulling these trophies out of the dumpster and how life will trash your trophies. And depending on what you put your attention in and what you aspire to in life, you could find it in a dumpster if it's not something that's got eternal reward or eternal dividends. So that's one of them. We have another story about a man who's a barber, and he committed to using his gift and talent for the kingdom. And so he goes into nursing homes and he cuts the hair of people in nursing homes and brings dignity to them and just loves the opportunity to use his gift and serve God with his gift.
So as people are watching these videos and learning of these stories, what kind of impact is that having on the men that are watching?
Yeah, great question, Martha. We hear from people often. On our website, we have a contact us banner or a nominate someone. And I remember recently hearing a story from a man who had heard one of our stories about the power of forgiveness and what it meant to forgive people. And he was getting ready just that week to go visit family that he was estranged from. And he said he listened to the story And the story reminded him of what Jesus said about forgiving others, including his family. And so he said, I'm going home and I'm going to walk this out. And so we're hearing real life application. And that's really what our desire was when we wrote these stories. The podcasts are short because we knew men's attention span was short. And we wanted
Wait a minute, there's another dig against men. Men have short attention spans.
No, it's just truth.
Hang on a minute.
It's not a dig, it's truth.
We're talking today with Blake Mattocks from 365christianmen.com, 365christianmen.com. You can see there's video, there's audio. It's powerful. It'll change your life. You need to get subscribed to get these things sent to you. 365christianmen.com. We'll have Blake tell you how to get in touch with them when we come right back.
Unlike Jim, I didn't dream of being on camera. I was content to play piano and sing in a choir. Who knew that today Jim and I would have interviewed over 3,000 people and created tons of podcasts and videos, helping Christians to unlock God's purpose for you and your work. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I work for him.
Hey, we're back with Blake Mattocks from 365christianmen.com. Blake, what I love about the stories that you've been covering, and I've only listened to several, but it's about men and how they're living out their faith in their work, whatever that work may be. Like I listened to Lecrae's story, which was fantastic. I had no idea. I loved that. So talk to me about how can people get signed up to get your podcast? Because it's video and audio, right?
Yeah, correct. So easiest way is just type in 365christianmen.com. You can access it through the website or through an RSS feed, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. You can go to YouTube if you want to watch the video. But really, there's a number of ways that you can resource the content that we have out there.
Excellent. I'm so glad that you just brought up that about Lecrae, because I'm just going to do something a little fun right now. I heard Jim listening to the Lecrae story the other day, and I said, we have his audiobook. So let's do a little giveaway on today's show. I know it's hard to see with the lighting.
Hold it while you're talking.
But listeners, this is your opportunity to get something free from I Work for Him, and it will bless you. I know it will. Call our listener line at 866-713-9675, and we will select one winner. I will get this in the mail to you. Just leave me your name, your email, and your mailing address, and we'll do the rest.
So it's Unashamed, Lecrae's audiobook, 866-713-9675. All right, Blake, we got a lot of people listening. Some are men, some are not. Some are women, and they want to tell their men about it. If they go out to 365christianmen.com, 365christianmen.com, how do they get signed up? What do they do in order to get this in their mailbox or email? I mean, can you get them sent to you every day, or is it just out there on podcast platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people that have them sent through the RSS feed, through iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify, and it's in their inbox every day, and they listen to it. We've got an audiobook and ebooks available, so people can purchase if they prefer reading or listening. So the website is the easiest way to go. There's also a banner there to be able to nominate someone.
And so what do you mean?
Nominate someone. What's that, Jim?
What do you mean? What do you mean, nominate someone?
So let's say somebody wanted to write a story about you, Jim, and Martha would fill out the nominate someone, and that would come to us, and then we would have an opportunity to contact you and find out if that's a story that fits into the category of 365 Christian Men. We wrote year one, and we've created year one. We're in the process now of populating a spreadsheet for 365 Christian Women to do the same thing, and year two, 365 Christian Men. So we want stories to keep coming in to us, men's stories and women's stories.
Wow. And there are some phenomenal stories of God working in the lives of men and women across the globe. What an incredible opportunity you have to cover those stories. And what I love is it's not just people from today. It's you got stories of guys that lived 200 years ago out there. And so you're learning some history at the same time. Blake Mattocks, when we first talked, I really didn't understand exactly what you're doing. But once you started producing this stuff, I started looking at them like, wow, I get it. Because people need to know it's okay to be a man of God. It's okay to walk closely with the Lord, and it's okay to make mistakes, ask forgiveness, and pick yourself up and move forward. And that's what 365 Christian Men is all about, encouraging you to not give up, live out your faith, and move forward. And 365 Christian Women, when that's ready to roll out, Blake, we want to help you roll it out here.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, make sure you, well, go ahead,
don't
Martha.
forget, listeners, if you want to win a copy of Lecrae's story, Unashamed, and it's read by Lecrae, we have the audiobook available for one winner, 866-713-9675. And most importantly, go visit 365christianmen.com and get engaged with this content yourself and share it with others.
Encourage the men in your lives. It's okay to be a man, to be a father, to be a husband, to be a leader. But of course, to love your wives like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. These are stories of men who've done just that. Maybe made a few mistakes along the way, but have done just that. 365christianmen.com. Blake Mattocks, thanks for bringing it to our attention, and thanks for sharing about it on I Work for Him.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been a blessing.
You've been listening to I Work for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field. But ultimately, I work for Him.
Thank you for listening to the I Work for Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work for Him Nation, or subscribe to our weekly blog. You can also follow us on social media at I Work for Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's at I Work for Him and online, iworkforhim.com. I work the number 4 him.com.